What's up, guys? Welcome back to Storytime with Uncle John, where I get to tell some stories and run my mouth for a little while, and you get to listen. Or you get to click on another video, so whatever. If you're here, glad you're here. If you stay, I'm glad you stay. Alright, guys, let's get to it. Oh, today is Malicious Compliance. Father's Day is right around the corner. It has begun. 18 years ago, not about. Trust me, I know this one to the day. I was over Dad's house and I needed a wrench. And coming from a long line of mechanics, I knew he'd have one available as I didn't have my kit in my car, so I asked to borrow one. Dad, of course, said yes, handed me the mechanic's toolbox, and just out of habit, I opened it and immediately noticed that a Craftsman 7/16 ratchet end wrench was missing. Again, I come from a long line of mechanics. Every tool has its place, be it in a drawer, box, or outlined on a pegboard, and I thought it was weird that Dad lost the wrench out of the spare/house tool kit. You're missing a 7/16, I pointed out, showing him the missing slot. Now Dad, being Dad, just had to bust on me a bit, so looking me dead in the eyes and beaming a huge smile, he responded, "It was there when I gave it to you." Mind you, I hadn't left the kitchen. I hadn't so much as shifted my feet. I knew he was lying, he knew he was lying, but it had been ingrained in me since childhood that losing a tool is a death sentence. Now I knew he was busting my balls, and I let it go. But from that day forward, anytime we needed something, he'd make a comment like, "Sure wish I had that 7/16 wrench that Coyote lost." Or, "You know what would fix it? That missing 7/16 wrench." This went on for months. So one day he made the usual tease me for losing a tool comment, and I warned him. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Say it one more time, old man, and you're going to get that wrench every birthday, Father's Day, and Christmas for the rest of your natural life." A few hours passed and I asked him to hand me a tool, and he said, "I can't, you lost it, remember?" I laughed and played it off, but it was on, and that was 18 years ago. Today being Father's Day, he just received his 52nd Craftsman ratchet end 7/16 wrench. Since that day, he's tried telling me that he knows that I didn't lose it. I knew that already. That I don't need to buy it. Oh, I effing do. And he's occasionally tried to say it was a different size or item to get a different present, but we both know that's not happening. They're everywhere. Every coffee can, junk drawer, cabinet, toolbox, pegboard, or spare nail in the house and garage contains a Craftsman 7/16 ratchet end wrench. You know how they say you're never more than 8 feet from a spider? Well, in Dad's world, you're never more than 7 feet from a Craftsman 7/16 ratchet end wrench, because there are at least 2 in his truck at this point as well. When will it end? When the old bastard dies. The last wrench will go in his cold, dead hand so he can tighten bolts in hell, because I warned him. Damn it, I warned him. This is a little update. Happy Father's Day to all of you with weird traditions, jokes, and relationships with the man who made you who you are today. And if you need a wrench, hit me up. I know a guy. 3 wrenches were purchased to get me through the year, arrived, and now it's Father's Day again and will be wrench number 55. Hell hath no fury like a wrench never lost. Alright. Confession time. So, I can be that dad sometimes. Don't get me wrong. My kids lose a ton of my tools. My kids, their spouses, their friends, their kids. But, I also lose my own tools. It's been known to happen. They don't really get lost. They more like get misplaced because I always end up finding them eventually. I just started cleaning up my basement again and started getting back into woodworking. Oh, cool. Check this out. So, stupid little 3 blocks of wood, piece of all thread, couple nuts, wing nuts, washers, and a spring. This is for, I don't know if you saw it a few videos ago, I had a spool of fishing line on there, and the spring and everything is for a tensioner, so that you can clamp this to your tabletop and load your fishing line onto your reel with some tension, and, it's just an extra set of hands. Anyway, dumb stuff like that. So I've actually gotten back into doing a little bit of crafty stuff again. But when I started cleaning up the basement so I could actually work down there, found a lot of the missing utility knives, a lot of the missing carpenter's pencils, a lot of the missing pliers, a lot of the missing screwdrivers, drill tips, you name it. So yeah, I can be one of those guys. And now you've heard it right from me directly, so. I should talk to HR about leave if I'm legitimately having trouble at work 1 week before my due date? Sure thing, boss. This happened last year. I, female 31, was 1 week away from my due date and was working full-time in a school administration position. At this time, I had the capability to work from home if needed. Example, too sick to come to work, catch up on extra work, unable to secure daycare for my child, etc. When I accepted the position, prior to my pregnancy, I was told by my boss, let's call her Ronnie, that it was very flexible as long as I got my hours in. I very rarely worked from home and typically only did so for an hour or two in the morning if it was needed later on in order to work before OBGYN appointments, as it was a long commute between work and home and the doctor's office. However, I was told by Ronnie after accepting the position to try to limit work from home to 2 days a month, which is fine. At this point I was well under, since I was only working an hour or two, maybe twice a month, and only once a month before that. Being so close to my due date, I was experiencing physical hardships that made working on site more and more difficult, such as dizzy spells, a pulled tendon in my foot, and severe back pain. I was also scared of potentially going into labor while at work, with it being so far away from the hospital my OBGYN delivers at. To top it all off, my coworkers started asking more invasive questions about my pregnancy that made me uncomfortable. All in all, it was not a fun time. I explained all of this in an email to Ronnie and asked her permission to almost exclusively work from home up until I go into labor. I said I thought it would be a reasonable accommodation and I work really well from home. Ronnie responded a couple days later denying my request to work from home at all and said I needed to be there since we would be starting some of our busiest work in a couple months, which I'd be gone for on maternity leave anyways, so I'm not sure why she brought it up. But I could talk to HR about leave options if I'm truly having trouble working. By the way, it's illegal in my state to require an employee to take leave if there's a reasonable accommodation that can be made instead. Cue malicious compliance. I immediately went to HR and did just that. We talked about options and found out I could start my leave the very next day and still be paid state mandatory leave pay for the extra time. I informed Ronnie that I would be out starting the next day as I needed to take care of myself. She said, I understand you need to do what's best for you, but you need to understand that I need to do what's best for the team. So yeah, everything I normally managed basically went to crap in my absence as the other people on the team weren't qualified to do the work and kept taking time off leading up to my due date instead of learning the basics while I was still there to teach them. I left detailed procedure notes and workflow lists, but I later found out Ronnie had to pick up all the extra work and a lot of it never got done since she didn't have time. But it was best for the team, right boss? I don't understand why managers and supervisors become so rigid. I guess I get it. In school systems and corporations and things like that, I understand that there are a lot of people who take advantage of the system. I worked for a school system for, 8, 9 years. And I understand. I see it every day. There's people working the system nonstop. Whether it's sick time, PTO, lunch times, leaving campus when we're not supposed to, and sitting in your car eating lunch for 3 hours, taking a nap, doing whatever. So basically not doing your job. We had ID badges where you would swipe in, you would basically tap the Kronos machine on your way in the door in the morning and then tap it on your way out in the afternoon. If you were leaving campus for lunch, like you didn't have to tap in and out for lunch if you were still on campus. If you left campus, you were supposed to tap out and then tap back in when you come in. And most people weren't doing that. They were just sliding out to the Royal Farms or 7-Eleven or whatever. And there's always going to be somebody working the system. But with that being said, this lady was probably there long enough that Ronnie knew that she wasn't goofing off and, screwing around. She was doing her work and trying to make the best of a difficult situation from what she says. And I'm not sure 1 week's worth of flexibility would have been all that horrible, but some people just get so, they dig in their heels and they just got to have it a certain way. But, oh well, you got your wish. Stop omitting useless and unnecessary information from the customer? You got it, boss. This happened 3 years ago. Back in my old job, I used to work in a call center as an agent. My very first time working in a call center. Our company valued and monitored call time, so we were told to handle calls quickly, around 3 to 5 minutes per call, so we could assist more customers. After my training in nesting, they introduced me to the production floor. Early on, I noticed an easy way to handle calls fast. I would read the disclaimers in fine print, but the customers would just always brush me off or make me skip it, or just not really care at all. So I decided to provide them an option to listen to me or just skip it entirely. I did that, and in my first month working in the production floor, I was praised for only having 3 to 4 minutes average call time, handling 60 to 70 customers per day. I kept on doing this method for 2 more months. On my 4th month, there was a sudden change to the policy that told us to always read the disclaimers or fine print to the customers, even though they don't want to listen to it. That meant our call time would easily double, but since I already asked my customers if they want me to read the disclaimers to them or not, I just kept on doing it my way. At my next monthly review, I was called up by quality assurance and my team leader regarding my calls, where they told me to not skip or omit the disclaimers. I tried to argue with them that I gave my customers the option to listen to the disclaimers or not, and I even read the disclaimers to the customers if they wanted to change something on their account or if the changes would charge their account, even if they don't want to listen to the disclaimer. But they were adamant on following the new policies. Cue the malicious compliance. I talked with everyone who was also given a warning to follow the new policies and told them to just comply with the new policy, even if it cost us our call time and customer feedback. By this point, our average call time was already reaching 8 to 15 minutes, since we had to double check the customer's account and their information, confirm every action we're going to take, read out paragraphs of disclaimers, there could be 2 or more disclaimers in a single call, as well as documenting the call. This doesn't include calls where we have to get multiple people or departments involved. Due to the unsolicited reading of the disclaimers, more and more people were starting to get irate during the calls. Our company's rating went down significantly when we received negative feedback as well as complaints from customers regarding the employees and the service. I think this cost our company some money because many people at our office were laid off. Around this time, I found a better company with better pay, so I left. Well, unfortunately, with bigger companies and bigger corporations and things like that, the legal teams, they're there for a reason. And while it pisses me off to listen to disclaimers and things like that, I do get it. As a customer, I get it. You CYA, folks, you got to cover your butt and make sure that all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, whatever. Because, if you don't do that and something goes sideways, even if the customer said, I don't want to hear the disclaimers, you could get a lawsuit pretty quickly. So I don't know. I can see both sides of this one, but I mean, you followed it. You followed the procedure. So if it's a bad company policy, it's up to them to shake it out. Really, as an employee, you can only argue to a certain point, and then at that point, you just got to let it go and do what they say, or like you said, like you did, go find another job. So, well. Know how much you can lift. Back in high school, during my freshman year, I was on the football team. For my high school, if you were on the football team, you were required to have one weightlifting class in the fall semester per year, since the weightlifting coach was the football coach, and he could put you on a specialized training separate from the other students in the class. I normally train with one of my DE, defensive end buddies, since we lifted relatively close to each other, so most workouts we wouldn't have to change the weights after each set, and we could take a reasonable break between sets. One guy on the team, a backup CB, cornerback, was usually way too cocky for his own good, always trying to show up his teammates. It's also important to note that he was about 50 pounds lighter than us and didn't do hardly any lifting. One day, me and my DE were going for our 1-rep max squats. I think at the time we had about 255 on the bar. CB walked over with a smug look on his face that had "I'm better than you" written all over it. He told us that it looked easy and he could lift it no sweat. We told him it's definitely heavier than anything we've seen him lift. His confidence didn't falter though. He doubled down on his stance. Then he says to let him get one in. I look to DE. DE looks at me. Okay, fine. Go ahead. Do you want spotters? Nah, this is easy. I don't need your help. I look at DE and DE looks at me again. We took a step back and watched. To his credit, he was at least able to get it up off the hooks and onto his shoulders. His legs were shaking though. He clearly was struggling. But he very clearly said he could do it and he didn't want any help, so we didn't help him. The CB squat and didn't get back up. If there weren't guards to save him, he definitely would have been stuck there for a bit because DE and I were fully ready not to help him at all. CB walked away embarrassed, and Coach, who was apparently behind us when this whole thing happened, just laughed and told us, while funny, to not do that again. Coach referenced that moment several times during the season, and thankfully CB was a good sport about it all. We were cool for the rest of the season. Edit to clarify, Coach made it an unbreakable rule that no matter if you have spotters or not, you would always squat with bumper safeties under you. So when he squatted and got himself stuck, all he had to do was let go of the bar and roll forward. No need to wait for someone to help you, especially since the weight could be really heavy. Highest max I saw was 415, and many people only had one partner instead of two. That is a bad idea. So at most schools nowadays, I don't know about back in the day because I really didn't use the school gym to lift. I usually went to another gym down the street that was cheap and quiet at night, and I could get my lifts in, and I was never required to take the lifting class, although I didn't stay on the football team for long, and that's another story. Uncle John doesn't play well with others sometimes and really didn't like taking orders from that jackass coach, so anyway. But regardless, if you're going to lift, know your limit and have a spotter. I did take chances back then, but even at the little gym that I went to, the little private gym, they had some stuff in place where you had to have a certain amount of safety equipment like the bumper bars and things like that, or spotters, or both. It depends on where you go and who's on shift that day managing. But it's definitely a rule in the school gyms now, at least around here, where if you lift heavy, you have to have both the safety precautions and the spotters. And it's a good idea because there's a lot of people that end up with broken backs, broken necks, broken limbs, lifelong injuries. I've taken chances in the past on lifting. I did a lot of my lifting junkyard style or prison yard style, however you want to look at it. Cinder blocks on bars, tires that I've collected and flipped. Worked carpentry and construction for years, carrying heavy loads of lumber and plywood and things like that for general overall strength and conditioning. But then, when I went into service after high school, I also started lifting heavily in a gym. Not competitively. I was only really competing with myself. I didn't compete with anybody else. I didn't go on any teams or anything. I just liked lifting. And I'm kind of built for moving heavy stuff. So that's what I did. And it usually feels good and lets out a lot of steam. But you still got to know your limits. You can push them a little here and there, but anything where that bar can fall on you and break something or choke you out, that's just asking for trouble. So, yeah. Glad the guy was okay, and glad you guys got along after that. And glad the coach called you on it and told you don't do that no more. Anymore. Sorry. Eastern Shore coming out in me. Don't tell me how to do my job. 2 years ago, after putting hardwood in our foyer and dining room, we decided on a particular baseboard that Lowe's carried in Pro Packs. These packs come with 6 12-foot boards and I believe cost roughly $180 each. We purchased 2 packs knowing that one wasn't enough, but we should have 4 boards left over which we could then return. Due to a few miscuts, first time DIYing floors, I ended up having 3 full boards to return, which I lugged back with my receipt. I brought them to the return area and the lady who helped me was very unpleasant. As she took my receipt, I explained that these were 3 boards from one of the Pro Packs on the receipt, and that the refund should be half the cost of one, which is what the person who sold me the packs originally told me would happen. She asked me if I bought one of the boards on another receipt, and I repeated that all 3 boards were part of a pack, that there were no other receipts, and that the refund should only be half of one of the listed items. She said back to me, verbatim, "Don't tell me how to do my job," and then walked back to the area to talk to another lady also working returns. 2 minutes later, she came back and asked for my credit card. After putting a refund for $360 on my card, oh my god, she also gave me a Lowe's store gift card with $180 on it because I didn't have the receipt for the 3 boards I was returning. Huh? I was going to mention that I should have only gotten a $90 refund on my card and no gift card, but I didn't want to tell her how to do her job. So I left. Went back a few weeks later and used the gift card for 5 gallons of paint, which we used to paint the same rooms. Oh look! There's a nickel! Come here, boy. Come here. You have to walk up. You couldn't. You're a cat. You're supposed to jump. This is Nickel. He's one of the snuggliest cats we have. They're all very affectionate, just in different ways. Nickel's not actually looking for loves right now. He actually wants the chair that I'm sitting in because that's his normal daytime routine. So, yeah. He's kind of moping because he wants his chair back. Right, boy? You want your chair? Do you want your chair? Oh. Anyway, I've run into... Thanks. Anyway, I've run into that before where, I go to return something and they either don't want to return anything or they want to give me way too much money. And it's just, I don't understand. I try to be as honest as I can, but if somebody's being snarky and nasty and rude, then it is what it is. I'm definitely not going to walk out of there shorted. If they give me extra, I'll try to tell them that they gave me extra and to please correct it, for me and them. But otherwise, what are you going to do? All right, guys, thanks for joining in today. Hope you enjoyed the stories. And do me a favor, if you did enjoy the stories, click all those little things down below and see what they do. Be sure to tell your friends. And till the next one, we'll see you.